Welcome to episode number 95 of the Eavesdrop podcast. This episode is brought to you by DoorDash and Liquid IV, and I'll tell you a little bit more about them later on in the episode. Today we have my friend, colleague, partner, Mr. Max Goldstein, from the famous Union Electric, from the famous Google, from the famous, what else did you do?
Openness Labs. Number of other startups, but yeah, it's been a journey. Excited to tell you all about it.
Yeah, same. Well, I'm looking forward to it. We met a couple of months ago, almost like half a year ago, right?
Yeah, it's been about 6 months.
Holy shit, it goes fast when you're having fun.
But I don't feel like I've really gotten to know you since I've been to Texas.
Yeah.
I mean,
so now you got
now. I feel like I know you now. Like the virtual thing, cool. Had to do it.
Yeah.
You coming to California, visiting me.
Yeah.
We're hosting you. That's great. Coming here to Frisco, getting picked up in the G-Wagon, doing the barbecue, seeing the Hecz quarters. I feel, this is sort of like I get it. I get it now.
Now you get it?
Yeah, now I get it.
It's weird. It's weird, and one of the good things that came out of this COVID thing, I keep saying, is the fact that now everyone is okay with doing work from home meetings, right, and having this virtual sort of meeting face to face that doesn't. When I go into those, I always have my camera on, and I see the amount of people that immediately turn their cameras on. Like one person needs to lead that way, and then everybody's like, all right, I guess we're turning our cameras on. Yeah,
it's interesting. I spent the early part of my career at Google. I never worked in the same building with my boss at any point. I was in New York. My managers were always in Mountain View, California. Teammates all over the country and world. So the sort of switch to the Zoom, for me, that we've been doing that for 10 years.
Okay, so you were already
and it was actually sort of, a bit frustrating actually working with people in a little bit more of an analog way. Like
really?
as you leave Google, then you start working with sort of normal companies a little bit, right?
I still have friends that work there. So the reason that you're here today is obviously because you are my partner in the weed company.
One of a few.
Right? One of a few partners. But you are one of the partners in this thing, and I wanted to sort of let them get to know you because my world lives here, and everything that I do is like they are a part of. They're coming along on this journey with us too. So I wanted to sit down with you and get your thoughts on the industry, where we're at in the cannabis industry, where we're going in the cannabis industry. We'll talk a little bit about your background first and all that stuff. But I do want to hear your thoughts essentially on like the crossover that you're sort of seeing.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So for context, I'm a partner in Openness Labs. We're a cannabis venture studio out in LA. We are incubating a house of brands across both cannabis and hemp. And our model is really focused on the brand aspect of the industry. So cannabis, it's agriculture. Whether you're growing plants, really complex supply chains, obviously highly regulated, very different from state to state. It's a really, really dynamic and challenging environment. But our particular group really sees brands as being sort of the real next phase of growth for the industry. To this point, it's really just been about, how do we get states online just in terms of adult use cannabis? How do we just make sure regs are being, written in a way that's going to be healthy? Yeah, the regulations are going to be written in a way that's super healthy for the industry and for growth. And really for a lot of states that are just getting adult use cannabis, whatever's on the shelf is going to move. Just because people are just so happy to get it. They're waiting outside dispensaries. The supply chains aren't there. But what you're seeing in California is really sort of the maturity of the cannabis market, where brands really do make an impact on sell-through. They really are going to sort of drive this next wave of adoption across the country. And when we learned and got to know you as your interest in the space and wanting to work in the cannabis, we had always felt like there was an intersection with gaming and cannabis. You don't need to be a rocket scientist to know that you can smoke weed and want to play video games.
Yeah,
right?
unlike drinking, right? Like I've tried to play drunk before, and just my shot isn't there.
No, I mean, and some people do it, helps them relax. Some people helps get focused. I mean, there's a lot of things that cannabis does for people, but I think working with you on this in particular has been just really exciting for us because we've seen a lot of celebrity brands getting launched in the cannabis space. I think there's a big difference between a celebrity launching a cannabis brand and somebody who's really leading a community of people really moving in to help that community learn and be educated and to really, move in and sort of have a space in the cannabis industry that they feel like is their own. And I think that is a real big focus that, we've been talking a lot about as we're getting ready to roll this thing out. Is we're not going to slap a label on this thing and call it Hecz, right?
No.
This is an experience that we want, the people that you've, helped raise over the last decade to have a really...
That's a good way of putting it.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, 10, 15 years people have been following you, and this is just an amazing opportunity for you to introduce cannabis in we think is a really fun and responsible way.
Yeah, well, thank you for that. Let's start from the beginning. Who is Max Goldstein? Where did you grow up? Where were you born? How old are you today?
Damn.
Right,
there we go. Max, born and raised in Atlanta, Georgia. I spent about 11 years in New York City, working for Google and startups during that time.
Is this audio good, Matt? Okay.
And I think, got into cannabis about 2 years ago with my partner Tyler and a
shout out Tyler, man.
Yeah, Tyler will be on here soon, and a number of my other partners as well. And so, I think one of the most exciting things, at least for me, about cannabis is the opportunity to build an industry from the ground up.
Yeah.
I spent, my 20s working at Google. I think when you're in 2011, 2012.
So tell me how you got there, right? Like you said you grew up in Atlanta, right?
Yeah, grew up in Atlanta. I went to school in Pennsylvania. I actually worked right after college. I worked in professional baseball.
Okay.
I played baseball in college. I worked for the Mets and the Red Sox. I was a pitcher.
Oh, pitcher, really?
Yeah, I was a pitcher. Played in Atlanta.
What's the fastest?
I mean, I threw in like the mid 80s. I played like low D1, right? So like,
76 was the fastest.
I'm talking to you now here. I'm not out. I'm not still out there.
I mean that. I was at a Sox game and like when I was like 17, 19, and I threw like everybody was throwing out of all my friends. I threw the hardest, the fastest, and obviously the most accurate.
Obviously, yeah.
Right. So 76 is mine, and then I fell right outside, and I can't throw that fast anymore.
Yeah, no, I definitely could not either. I think baseball is a really cool sport. Not as much interest now as maybe when I was growing up, but really, really good life lessons. I think what's cool about baseball is you fail 7 out of 10 times and you're going to the Hall of Fame. And so it's probably one of the most character building sports that you can play because it's just constantly dealing with your own failures.
Yeah.
And it toughens you up and it gives you a really sense of who you are and what you can contribute. So I'm grateful for that experience right after school, but left baseball. I ended up getting a job at Google. I was like, I want to get away from sports.
How did that happen?
Man, I interviewed. I applied and I interviewed.
What's the interview process like for you? Is it the same way as?
There was definitely some elements of that. There were some elements that were a little bit more.
Elements of that, where was I going with that?
Like the
movie?
There are 3, needles in a haystack type of thing.
This is something that you will get from avid marijuana users, right? Like the predictability of somebody else's thought before even them saying that. Because I was going to bring up the movie of Owen Wilson and Vince Vaughn, and you immediately knew that that's what I was going to be. Or maybe it's the fact that you always get asked that question.
It was it. I mean, especially at that point, I think, Google's been around a long time now. Yeah. I think most people have known people that work at Google. Yeah. They know that we're not like some special type of person, right? But I think at that time,
are you allowed to say that?
Regular people just holding a regular corporate job.
Yeah.
But at that point, there was a lot of mystique around the company, and rightfully so, building amazing technology and changing the world. Yeah. And so there was this assumption that, if you work there somehow, you're super smart or superhuman. That's not the case. And my real focus was on marketing, and so really bridging the gap between new product development and the users and the customers, and really help the engineers who are not necessarily as close to the user and the everyday customer.
The actual special dudes that are special.
Yeah, they're the real talent. Yeah. I was kind of like a gap between a translator. And so that was a really cool role. I worked on Google Plus, which was really interesting experience.
You're the one.
I am the one.
Well, he's the one that made all of us have to sign into that in order to access our stuff. What?
Yeah.
What were you thinking?
Yeah. So
I'm kidding. He's not the one, but
not specifically the one, but really interesting. Actually, I could have worked on Android. I could have worked on Chrome. These are all wildly successful projects.
Yeah.
Google's had its fair share of unsuccessful projects, and oftentimes they iterate into something else. But I think at a high level, you know, Google Plus was like critical to building the Google ecosystem that we all experience today. We log in with a single identity and name, and that was non-existent in 2010 and 2011. We had aliases on YouTube. We had products like Wave and all had different logins and passwords. It was a disaster. So Google Plus was like sort of this intermediary step to kind of like unify the Google system. It got launched as a Facebook competitor and just failed, like, you know, utterly. But I distinctly remember, you know, 2012, you know, director comes in and you're like, guys, there are people playing video games and streaming it on the internet, and there are all these people watching. Like, we got to tap into that and all this stuff. And it, like, distinctively remember that. And like 10 years later, I'm sitting here in the Hecz quarters with all this infrastructure, and it really was like you and others just deciding just to turn the live camera on and create these audiences. And now we have massive industries. And I think there's so much similarities in cannabis, because you as an individual have had so much impact on that trajectory, and us as early operators in this space are going to be able to have a similar impact, just in terms of our values, in terms of our leadership, in terms of like what we think the industry should behave right and wrong. And there's a lot of bad actors that can come into cannabis, and I'm sure there's been bad actors that have come in to get just opportunity, like, but the core, what's going to make cannabis ultimately really successful are the individual people that believe in the vision of an equitable, the power of the plant, the respect and the sacrifice people have made. 50,000 people still sitting in jail today for cannabis. And so there's a lot of issues and hypocrisy still out there going on, and the early operators need to continue to kind of raise their hand and, you know, keep pushing until we get the industry that ultimately we think the customer and the people who have really sacrificed have worked for. So there's no legal cannabis industry today. If all of us didn't, you know, consistently go out and basically take risk of buying this illegal product to move this industry forward. So customers have driven this industry and will continue to do so. And, you know, someone like yourself that has such an incredible community, I think it's a great opportunity to really build this industry.
The way that I'm approaching this thing, as you know, is the same way that I approached the fishing thing when I was doing Bashers, and then ultimately, you know, Guggen. You know, I always make it a point to say, like, you know, the boys from Guggen are the guys that made Guggen. But from the beginning, it was like, look, some of my fans, or some of the people that watch this, some of the members of the Green Wall, some of these people that have followed Optic for such a long time are also fishermen. Therefore, there is an opportunity to share something else outside of gaming that's there with them, right? So that sort of is the same approach that I was taking. But more importantly, it is a thing that needs to be researched, a thing that needs change, and we'll leave a link in the description to the change.org link that can help you sign a petition to help the people who are currently imprisoned because of the same like thing that we get to. If I go to California, I can literally smoke outside. When I was there, what was it, last month, I went to a place, I bought some stuff, I bought pre-rolls, and then I went back to my hotel room, and then every night, because I only smoke after like 5 o'clock, right? Like that's my thing. Instead of taking a shot of tequila, or instead of drinking a whiskey or whatever, I'll go outside, I'll smoke a selfie. Sometimes I'll smoke half a joint. So, you know, whatever I need to like go to sleep in order to wake up, refresh, and do that. And it was so like people were walking by me like nothing. Like they weren't even like, oh, you're smoking, you know, like that sort of thing. It was just like, you know, people minding their own business. I'm on my phone smoking my joint, and that was that. But then you come to Texas, I can't even look at the stuff. Right? I mean, CBD, CBG, like all the like Delta 8, like that's all.
I mean, where's the Delta 8 dabs, right? I mean,
the dabs, I think, are they coming?
I've heard, been following the Hecz Co weed handles. I saw the thing about Delta 8. Somebody's talking about Delta 8 dabs, so I was expecting you to have full Delta 8 dab rigs around.
Were you surprised? Obviously, we saw the potential, right, of what this was. And originally, as I was going through this thing, I'm like, I want to make sure that we don't necessarily like marry gaming and weed through me. Like I didn't want to be that guy. I wanted to launch a business same way that if I launch a tequila business in the future, I don't want it to be like, this is the gamer's tequila, right? Like that's like the cringiest shit that you can do. So I'm always very mindful of that. But as we're going through this thing and you're seeing the sort of interactions that we've had with a lot of the people that are watching this video, for example, that follow the socials, which will be linked in the description down below. Were you surprised at the amount of people that followed?
Blown away.
Yeah.
Well, I Google. We've worked with a lot of celebrities. There's definitely a lot of people who can draw likes, comments. There's very few people that draw thoughtful audience interaction.
Mm-hmm.
You guys are dialed.
Yeah.
When you like, what strain should I smoke? Like some of the suggestions, I'm like, clearly you've got cultivators following you.
Yep.
Clearly you've got people who are very well versed in everything going on in the cannabis industry. And so I think it's really there's very few comment sections in cannabis today that are as thoughtful and as dialed as the Hecz WeCo is. It's only been live for like a month.
Yeah.
So I think what's so exciting about this brand and opportunity is really just bringing the audience into the fold.
Yeah.
Bringing them into the cultivation
That's
process, bringing them into getting direct feedback on the product itself. I think the biggest thing that cannabis brands do and make mistakes on is not being transparent.
Yeah.
It's not providing, who grew this, when was it grown, when was it cultivated, how do I get my eyes on this? And because for a lot of consumers, this is a huge chunk of their disposable income. So it's a very important purchase, and you want to know you're getting value, and you want to build trust. And I think a lot of cannabis brands, particularly celebrity cannabis brands, have just come in, they've white labeled somebody else's weed, slapped their name on it, and they're just trying to make a buck and get out.
Yeah.
And that is not what's going to create long-term brand value in this industry, and it's clearly not how you're wired. And this is unique. There's very few people, I think, that are better suited to help create this bridge than you are, in large part just because of how educated and engaged your audience is. Just totally blown away.
Yeah, that's one thing that no one will ever be able to take away from anyone here in the gaming space, right? Like every single one of these people that are watching, or everybody that is in esports, and it doesn't just stop here with our audience. It is across all of gaming and esports. It is the most clever. These are the type of people that do their research to make sure that they're getting the best deal, to do the research to make sure that they're getting the best quality. They don't mind paying for it.
Yep.
Like nobody here minds paying for something that's of good value, right?
Yep.
We can tell by the merch and how expensive the merch has been in esports for a long time. I mean, the customer base is there. So, but they're very educated.
Yep.
Like every single one, no matter what it is, they're educated. The amount of gaming fishermen that I talk to, like they know their shit. They know more than I do. They know more nuts than I do. They know what baits to use, and way more. So I'm constantly like, it's this symbiotic relationship where I'm constantly learning from them as much as sometimes they're learning from me on the things that I do. But for the majority of the time, like there's never been a moment in history as this sort of era where you can have immediate feedback and the opinion of hundreds of people all at once on something that you may want. Like, do you guys like this T-shirt? 300 people. 170 of them say yes, right? So all right, the yes have it, right? That's that sort of scenario.
I mean, it's incredible, and I think just the process that we're gonna get to go through together and with the audience, like we're just taking this we're just so excited and just taking it super seriously, and I think this is an open forum for your audience, and we want to continue to find a way to just have them a part of this from the beginning, and we're ultimately going to get them what they want. And so, incredibly grateful just from the audience already, and the support, the information, the feedback, and then just making sure that they know that we need them to really be part of this sort of next phase of the brand.
So let me ask you this: you worked at Google, obviously. You had a good position as I understand. Like you leave Google and then you sort of start into your like startup phase? Or?
So I launched a startup right after Google. We built mobile chat technology for emerging markets. So me and a couple former Googlers, one of the things that we were looking at, this was like 2015, was next billion users on the internet. I think at that time, under half the planet had the internet. And so we were looking at different types of technology that we could build to help onboard that next generation of internet users who are using, either dumb phones or cheap Androids, expensive internet, slow bandwidth, and we were building chat. We built chat platforms that would integrate real-time content into public and private chat rooms to kind of create a web browser community focus within the emerging world internet. So we did that for a number of years. We ended up selling that technology to one of our partners. I worked with a group, a venture capital firm for another year, so kind of sat on the other side of the table a little bit. So startup, pretty limited resources, doing a lot of fundraising, really hard. Startups are really hard. Got a little exposure on the venture capital side, and then partnered with Tyler, Michael, and Chris to launch Open Nest about 2 years ago. And we really focus on the sort of 0 to 1 phase. How do you take an idea, a concept, and take that and get it to $1 million in revenue with as little money as possible? That's sort of the hardest part in a startup. But that's where the most enterprise value is created. That's where you're the founder of the company, you're creating common stock, and that's where the big upside is. But a lot of investors and a lot of people looking at early stage startups can't actually do that hard work themselves. Yeah. So we roll up our sleeves, we work side by side. We launched Union Electric with our first THC flower brand about a year ago in the value space. So I think one of the
things. What does that mean?
So
the value space.
Yeah, the value. So we about $25 out the door for an eighth. Okay. We source high quality, hybrid indoor or I'd say light depth greenhouse flower from a lot of great cultivators. And we sacrifice a little bit on the bud size, so we source a little smaller buds, high potency, 20 to 30% THC, but at a really, really good price point. And quite frankly, that's most of the market. I think a lot of people sort of under the assumption, you've seen some big brands, cookies, others that have operated in the $50 to $60 eighth. Yeah. But if you look at the top selling SKUs in California, Pacific Stone, it's a $20 eighth because it's the everyday consumer and that's what they can afford. Yeah. Most people can't afford to smoke a $60 eighth every day, or a gram or two of that every day. It's $3,000, $4,000, $5,000 a year. Yeah. So we focus on the value space. That's really been great for us because we've just opened a ton of doors. I mean, we've been able to, I'd say we're probably in about 150 doors now.
And when you say doors, you're talking about dispensaries?
Dispensary doors. Yeah. So we've been around about a year, really fast growth. We don't need to market this brand a lot because the value, the flower, and the price point just really moves. Yeah. And I think that's one of the really important things that we've learned in this process is cannabis consumers don't really want to be marketed to. They want to be part of something. Yeah. They've been investing in this plant for decades, and the idea that somebody is going to show up and in their corporate outfit and make a fancy box and say that you need to buy this now, it's like, dude, I've been buying this for 20 years. You're going to tell me what I need to buy? So we focus on a really simple brand for the everyday consumer, and that we see as someone that is probably making $50,000, $60,000, $70,000 a year consuming every day, and they need a really good affordable option that meets their standards. So we've had a lot of fun launching that brand, and I think we're in this really important shift in the industry right now where we went from if you had a license and you can make the product, you're going to be successful and sell it, to wait a minute, customers are actually picking this brand over this brand, and this brand has values and ethos and things that I resonate with, and this one doesn't.
Yeah, and that's what's missing right now, right? In the industry, there's a lot of people that are sort of creating these brands, right? And we'll talk about celebrity brands in a little bit, but I think that one of the things that the opportunity here is that right now there isn't the Marlboro, there isn't the Camel, there isn't the Newport of cannabis, right? The Davidoffs. I mean, you name it. All these famous cigar companies and all these famous cigarette companies. That there isn't a brand of that, right? There isn't a place where you can go and be like, okay, this is Hecz Weed Co. packaging, and this is the strain that they're using. Oh, the farmer that made this strain is the one that made the strain on season 1 of the drop, and I really liked it. So now you sort of develop this curation of sort of cannabis. Yep. That you're like, okay, I want to have the same experience every single time that I smoke it. And obviously, it depends on the time of day, it depends on what you've eaten, and all of that. But the whole point of it is that right now there isn't something that's regularly there for you to one cheeseburger in McDonald's tastes the same here as it does back in Chicago. Yep. Because they got everything, same meat, same bun, same everything. And right now we don't have that in cannabis.
Nor do I think necessarily that's exactly how it'll end up being. I think we think that Marlboro has been really successful at rolling up a plant and selling it. But tobacco for how it's grown, it's much more suited as a pure commodity than cannabis, because tobacco, you can't make it smell like banana and gasoline. So like just the complexity of the cannabis plant, the different, like you can grow one strain in one facility and grow the same strain in another facility. It's completely different, right? So and part of this is us figuring out as brand builders, what are those things that we need to embrace that make cannabis different? And what are the things that we need to look at under industries like a tobacco or a beverage or any CPG category for that matter, and say, okay, we need to like professionalize the industry a little bit more in that direction and take some of the best practices there. But in our opinion, the power of the farmer is what hasn't been unlocked yet. And what I mean by that is it's really hard for a farm today to be what you call like vertically integrated. So you grow it, you package it, you distribute it, and then you get it into the retailer. It's so hard for a farmer to think about the marketing, the branding, the packaging, audience. So there's all these amazing farmers with amazing stories that have been doing this for decades that are completely in the shadows, that are really driving the innovation in this industry. And that's where the opportunity for you, Hecz, and Hecz Weed Co. is, how do we just shine light on that? How do we extract those stories, bring visibility to it, but not expect the farmer to be you, and you're not expected to throw up a greenhouse up here in Frisco, Texas, and start growing cannabis, because that's certainly not happening. So I think it's really about figuring out our own roles in this industry, respecting other people's, and knowing that we can't go at this alone. And all of us really need each other in order to build something that is truly equitable.
So where are we at in the timeline of the cannabis history, right? Like obviously there's massive history that has been in the dark ages and in very tough times. But now it's you're starting to see this turnover. Like where do you think we're at? First quarter, second quarter?
I mean, I think in terms of like the legal regulated industry,
it's going to be like before legalization and after, like before Christ and after.
I mean, that's basically like, 2018 was really the big year in California that moved sort of the medical market to what we have today, which anyone over 21 with a license can go in and buy it. That system also put in a lot more regulatory scrutiny, compliance testing, and a lot of things that have made it hard on operators, and a lot of people sort of have filtered out. But for your question, I mean, we're sort of first, second inning in the regulated market. And I think one of the big things that we need to kind of keep an eye out is what is going to happen at the federal level, and how is that going to impact a lot of the investment decisions that have been made over the previous 5 years? And what I mean by that, in California, you do have some semblance of a free market. A lot of farmers are truly farmers. They're independent. They applied for a license. A lot of them used to grow cut flowers or tomatoes or, the true breadbasket of the United States. They've taken those facilities and they've converted them to a higher price commodity as in cannabis. That is, I would say more of a migration of an industry as it is sort of like building something up from scratch. Whereas in Florida, you have something where only a certain number of people get licensed. You walk into a dispensary and whatever you bought there was also grown, packaged, and distributed by the same company. You're not typically going to get a robust marketplace. You're not going to get competition. And ultimately, the people who are going to reaping the profits of those structures are a limited number of very wealthy private investors. And so what happens at the federal level, which would, sort of what's sort of on the table is safe banking. So the ability for cannabis companies to actually bank in our financial system, which might sound like kind of wild and silly, but we have bank accounts. We work with credit unions and other groups that are a little bit smaller, but certainly can't walk on Bank of America and get a bank account today. So
do you think that these credit unions that are sort of supporting the space right now and taking the risk alongside with everybody that's in the space right now are going to be the ones that benefit from this industry more? Like I would want them. I would want what is it, Salal Credit Union, right, or whatever. I want Salal Credit Union to benefit more than Chase. I want Salal to benefit more than Bank of America. I want the ones that are supporting today to be the ones that benefit in the future of it, right? Because look, whether they get acquired or don't get acquired or that sort of world that is a possibility, I would want them to be the ones that benefit from it.
I think that there's people who've invested early and taken risks who definitely benefit from it. A lot of those people on the financial industry side too are also taking big
Many
fees.
risks, yeah.
Well, also
fees,
big fees, right?
Yeah.
Like, so, just a quick example. We don't have to get too inside
course.
baseball on like supply chain management, but I think, just the idea if you're, launching a new Hecz Quarter merch line and you want to sell $1.5 million of that to Target, they're going to give you a purchase order. And then that purchase order could be, say, like net 45. There's a gazillion financial institutions that would essentially give you money for that purchase order for a small fee. Essentially, a small interest rate to get that cash now, so you can move it back in the supply chain, create more t-shirts, and just keep the whole cycle moving. Right now, with no financial institutions really coming in to be able to like make those types of factoring loans and provide cash infusions within the supply chain, you have like, say, a farmer who goes from like seed to sale over a 9-month period and might not get money back for like 6 months.
Wow.
So it's so hard to run these businesses. You have the regulatory challenges, and then there's just no cash. There's no money coming in from outside to help like grease the wheels, basically. So that is a huge issue that's like preventing a lot of really good entrepreneurs and companies from being great. So that's, as soon as that changes, you're gonna see better brands, because there's just gonna be more flexibility on the financing perspective. The other thing is the MORE Act, which would essentially decriminalize cannabis in the United States of America. So right now it's federally legal, it's Schedule I drug. If that becomes decriminalized, I think what you're gonna see is a lot of California cultivators, some of which are large now, that are getting massive. So Glasshouse Farms, one of the biggest.
Give us some examples.
So Glasshouse Farms, one of the biggest groups in California. They're based in Carpinteria. It's all old cut flower industry that is converted over. They're currently operating one of the top selling groups and brands in California at 500,000 square feet. Ventura County, which is just south of Santa Barbara County, came online for cultivation. They're onboarding a facility that is 5 million square feet. 5 million. So 500,000 to a high-tech tomato cultivation operation, that'll be 5 million. So that's a 10x, and they're already one of the biggest brands in California. So where is all that weed gonna go?
Yeah.
And so you're gonna have groups like that being like, well, we're not doing this state-by-state thing anymore.
No.
And I think one of we sat down with the CEO of Glasshouse last week, and he was like, "What's your favorite non-Mexican tequila?"
Good point.
Can't really name one.
No.
And I think similarly, trying to grow really high quality weed in, some random place in, you name, even like Colorado, like they've got a lot of history there. Put me by the ocean in these greenhouses. Like, this is where the plant is going to thrive.
Yeah.
So what happens to those limited license states in Florida and all the money and infrastructure that's being invested there is a big question mark, and whether or not the cannabis industry is going to start working against each other for the future of the regulatory framework.
Yeah.
So that's a big open question, and a big thing that ultimately we're going to be a part of navigating and have a perspective on. So.
That's, again, this is like where this is where the opportunity lies, right? Like, it's so young in the history, right? In its own history, that I'm like excited about the future just because of the growth alone, right? Like last year, $17.5 billion on cannabis alone. And that is just with 13 states, I believe. 10 of them are just like recreational. Yeah. So there's still like do the math, right? Yeah. So 17.5 billion last year. It grew, I think 49%. I mean, I might be.
This is legal,
yeah,
right? I mean,
just legal.
So they talk about California being like 4 billion-ish in market. And then we call traditional market, people that are unlicensed, that have been growing weed in the hills of Humboldt County and shipping it all over the country and world.
Yeah, illegally.
Illegally. Yeah. That's probably 3 or 4x of the legal market today still.
Right. So let me ask you this on that, right? Because I have friends who live in Illinois. I moved out of Illinois at the same time that it was sort of coming online, or it actually was coming online. So I came to Texas, where it's super illegal, right? And then we were living in Illinois, where it became legal. And still to this day, like, some of my friends would rather still buy from their traditional ways, from the traditional ways, than to go to a dispensary and spend the 40% tax hike up that is. So you're talking about $90 eighths versus 20.
You're like probably better weed too. Like, it probably came from California and their guy. And so I think it's going to be a while, a number of years still, before a lot of that stuff changes. The analogy I think that most people, will understand that we think is similarly will happen with cannabis is really the evolution of Napster to Spotify.
Okay.
I mean, so you think about the 90s, it's like, man, we got the internet. All of a sudden, I can just download any song and then put it on my, I had like a little Rio MP3 player. They're like, this is great. And then all of a sudden, like you hear the FBI knocking on your door and you're like, oh, that's totally illegal and you can't do that. Not that the FBI is knocking on door for people buying weed, but the correlation is you don't know where that weed came from. It hasn't been compliance tested. It could have been grown with heavy metals. It could have pesticides all over it. And ultimately, we believe over the course of the next decade that the average consumer would rather pay not $10 a month to have unlimited streaming than keep their Napster.
Yeah.
And so there'll still be people who do home grows. I think there should be room in the regulatory framework for caregivers and people that need access to the plant and can't afford the regulated market.
Yeah.
But again, like as soon as there's access, as soon as there's dispensaries, and as soon as the regulatory framework and the taxes get a little bit more cleaned up, everyone's just going to be paying for unlimited streaming. Yeah. So I think that's a good sort of way for people who are sort of like, oh no, everyone's never going to go legal. I think that's a pretty good parallel.
I've always been a big plant guy. Not just cannabis, right? Like I've always been a big plant guy. Like my mom had plants everywhere in her home, right? Like she would make decorations out of light bulbs and put plants in there and this and the other. So I've always been like a green thumb sort of dude anyway. Yeah. So for me, like at one point or another, I do want to learn the process. Like that's one of the things that in this approach, and this is obviously not something that you said it's like, well, you don't have to do that, right? But I wanted to. Yeah. I wanted to go to the West Coast and spend the 2 months there from to see the entire life cycle of it and work there with the farmers. And I mean I'm still trying to figure out how I am going to do that because I want to learn it all from I don't want to just come in and slap a logo on something, right? Like I know that there's a lot of culture behind it. My first and number one thing on the first meetings I ever have with anyone about that is that, look, I understand that there's like this massive culture that has already existed. There's a lot of people that shouldn't be in jail right now. And here I am about to launch a multi-million-dollar business that is going to, be something that I get to benefit from. But these people are still like being penalized for something that I'm now doing super legally. Yeah. Right? Like even the transition, right? Like you just got here to Texas fucking yesterday. Like 24 hours with no weed. How does that feel?
Like, I mean, I had my hemp CBD.
Your CBD stuff,
No, I mean, I think the biggest and most exciting thing, we've had some meetings with some people here is great. It's just kind of like the evolution of the weed consumer in these markets is going to just be so fast once it turns on. It's going to go from like, oh yeah, like I tried that, like I like smoking, to okay, this actually really makes a difference in my life. I need products that would help me do this every day, to, okay, it really helps me sleep, really helps me focus. And then you sort of watch the consumer go from sort of the can of curious in a lot of instances to, all right, I'm spending $250 a month on cannabis because it's critical to my wellness and my everyday life. Yeah. So I think the recreational market is very well established all over the country. Yeah. Need to feed that. But I think we're also really excited to go work with you on the hemp side because THC is one of 130 cannabinoids in the plant. Yeah. There's been almost zero science and research on cannabis because it's been federally legal. Almost all of the science and research that has been done has been through the DEA on weed that is over 30 years old from an institution in Mississippi. The land races. It's just a disaster. Like they can't even run tests on good products.
No, of course not. No, it's an actual weed, right? Like they're getting it from outdoors. It hasn't the power of the plant hasn't, one, been harnessed, two, been examined, and three, like truly experimented on every single level, right? To test it at the teen level, maturity level, pre-teen level. Like we don't know the right way to even consume or intake, cannabis. Yeah, exactly. Right? Up until this point, the most basic way that we've been able to take it. Well, now obviously it's become advanced, and we have the dabs, the fucking
the vapes,
all of that,
press pills, gummies,
all of that. But up until one point, it was just the only way of consumption was just smoking this thing.
Yeah.
Right. So like all of the different applications that are going to come, or how they're going to be applicable, or what they're removing, what terpenes, whatever. Like we haven't experimented on anything, and there's like endless amounts of different combinations that you can produce that are going to be the way in the future. Whether it's 50 or 100, like we don't know, right? Like we haven't had enough data on the examination of these plants yet. Because again, right, like what are the basics that we know now, right? There's indica, and then there's sativa, and then there's a mixture of the two, right? But have we examined each and every single one of those, like even strains for that matter?
Yeah, no, I mean, that's just on the flower side. It's sort of like the historical lineages of those. Yep. I think it's even more, there's THC, which is really what most people think about when they eat cannabis, and that's very psychoactive. There are 130 cannabinoids that are not psychoactive. Right. Delta 8 is moderately psychoactive, which is where we find this like kind of gray zone in the market. But CBD, obviously a lot of popularity there. I think the everyday cannabis consumers are like, why would I take CBD? Yeah. But if you make a CBD, CBN, which is being documented as a way to help with sleep and sedating you. CBC is a cannabinoid, which they're learning like helps open up your endocannabinoid system to other cannabinoids. So in some ways it's like a catalyst for your body to intake those So like if we had put $100 million in science and research, we're going to just build so many new products, so many new concepts, so many ways in which the plant's going to affect people's lives that we're just like, first or second inning on how integrated cannabis will be from someone who's recreationally using it to somebody who is helping with pain management on their knee.
Yeah.
It's like such a large.
Yeah. And then you look at the opportunities just like across everything. Like you're seeing beer coming online. You're seeing like
beverage.
Beverage is like super cool. I mean, and you see the sort of like massive corporations. We just saw this week Amazon sort of saying it's like, hey,
it's big,
right? Like, hey, we're no longer going to test for cannabis, right? Like if you're a user, then that. And we were talking about it yesterday, and we were like, did that come from a super higher up corporate VP somewhere that some way got caught smoking, and now it's like, oh, we got to change the rules, because you can't have separate rules for. I mean, you can. It's humanity at the end of the day. Somebody's it's only cool when we do it mentality. But is it the same sort of rights that we give the corporate people, are the same sort of rights that we're going to give the assemblymen that are packaging and taping up these boxes, labeling them and sending them out? So if you think about how big Amazon is in fucking Seattle, where it's legal, a lot of your employees are going to be, after a long day of standing and lower back hurting, they're going to be taking something to ease the pain and go to sleep so they can get up next day and do it all over again.
I mean, look, I think Amazon's controversial for a number of different reasons, but the notion of them as a corporation, they certainly wouldn't have had to send this out, to your point, to their sort of corporate staff in Seattle. I'm sure that there's no rules or regulations on whether or not they can use cannabis.
Yeah.
But the drivers and the people in the factories probably had pretty strict rules, especially in places like Alabama and other places. But Amazon to raise their hand and say, we're not going to test for this anymore. And in fact, we acknowledge that cannabis is an important part of our workers' lives, is a really massive endorsement. And I don't think it's happening so fast. I don't think people are realizing that this is just the speed in which this is moving. I mean, I don't think we could have imagined this 10 years ago, where like a major corporate employer is like, it's cool if you smoke weed. And so what that's saying is weed does not inhibit your performance. Yeah. Weed does not make you a worse employee. Yep. Weed is depending on how you use it responsibly, like it's an important part of your life. Mm-hmm. So I think, in Canada right now, insurance companies are reimbursing people for cannabis. I mean, that's even another.
What do you mean?
So it's part of your health plan and nationalized medicine in Canada, that your insurance will actually reimburse you if you're being prescribed cannabis for pain, anxiety, sleep, other things. Mm-hmm. So that's a big that's the insurance company saying, not only is it okay, but we're going to reimburse this as medicine as we would penicillin or anything else. Yeah. So that's even further down the line. Where
yeah, but this medicine's not going to ruin your insides. Right?
Yeah, it's not going to ruin your. It's all natural. It's a plant. You know.
Yeah. All right, let me take a quick break, say hello to the sponsors, and then we'll be right back. This week we have DoorDash. DoorDash, I cannot tell you how thankful I am that you guys sponsor the podcast. So obviously as a user of DoorDash every single day, sometimes I order stuff from here before I leave, so I can time it perfectly so the food can get there at the same time I'm getting there. That way the food is, you know what I'm saying. Either way, in case you forgot, the last minute thing at the store, now you can get snacks, drinks, and household essentials in 30 minutes with DoorDash. Dinner? Check. Deodorant? Check. Morning pick-me-up from Dunkin' Donuts? Check. Get everything you need whenever you need it with DoorDash. You want Chinese food, they want pizza, and someone else is craving froyo. There's something for everyone on DoorDash. Tacos, a million places you can get it from. DoorDash connects you to restaurants you love right now, right to your door. And now you can get the grocery essentials you need with DoorDash. Get drinks, snacks, and other household items delivered to you with under an hour, which is super, super crazy. Toothpaste, you order it right now. Baby wipes, order that right now. Don't go do that. Toilet paper, don't order that no more. Order baby wipes, please, or a bidet, one of those things. As I was saying, ordering is easy. You open the DoorDash application, you choose what you want from where you want it, and your items will be left safely outside your door with a new contactless delivery drop-off setting. With over 300,000 partners in U.S., Puerto Rico, Australia, in Canada, come on. You guys can order from your local neighborhood go-tos. Choose from your favorite national restaurants like Popeyes, Chipotle, Cheesecake Factory. You name it, right? For a limited time only, our listeners can get 25% off and zero delivery fees on their first order of $15 or more when you download the DoorDash application and enter code Eavesdrop 2021. That is EAVESDROP 2021. That's 25% off. That is up to $10 in value and zero delivery fees on your first order when you download the DoorDash application from the App Store and you enter code EAVESDROP 2021. Don't forget, that is code Eavesdrop 2021 for 25% off your first order with DoorDash. Subjects to change and all the terms apply. Our second sponsor for the day is Liquid IV. We take it here at the Hecz quarters. We got sent a box about a year ago, and ever since then, we've just been buying it over because it jumpstarts your day, right? It gets you started. It gets all of those nutrients that you've lost throughout the night, whether it's sweating, whatever it is. You need Liquid IV. Drinking a bottle of water is really good to jumpstart your body, but drinking Liquid IV is what you want to do. So whether you push your body hard or it's just a free rundown, it's extremely important to stay hydrated. Making hydration a priority should be the number one priority. Helps us feel healthier on a day-to-day basis. With one stick of Liquid IV in 16 ounces of water, you get 2 to 3 times the amount of hydration as plain water. So if you're like me, who literally drinks a bottle or two of water even before they get out of bed, as long as you have one of those things as a Liquid IV in one of those 16-ounce bottles of water, it just works wonders, right? That's what I do, obviously. The other thing about it is that it's great tasting. Sure, water tastes good in the morning just by its own room temperature, super. You can chug it. If you add this little IV packet to it, then obviously your water consumption becomes that much more of an experience. Great tasting, and it gives you, like I just said, 2 to 3 more times the hydration than water alone. Just to give you some context here, it contains 5 essential vitamins, more vitamin C than an orange, and as much potassium as a banana. Healthier than sugary sports drinks, no artificial flavors or preservatives, and less sugar than an apple. Made with the ingredients of non-GMO, vegan, and free of gluten, dairy, and soy. What makes Liquid IV so effective? Well, let me tell you what. Let me tell you about cellular transport technology, also known in the common circles as CTT, right? The optimal ratio of glucose, sodium, and potassium delivers water and nutrients into the bloodstream. It's perfect balance to help you hydrate more quickly and effectively than water alone. One stick of Liquid IV in a 16-ounce water can give you as much hydration as 2 to 3 bottles of plain water. Think about that. Right? You can drink one for the price of 3, or you can drink one with one of these that'll be the same as 3, right? Super good. And you know, I like the messaging behind this, right? Like I like their mission. They are on a mission to change the world. The company is donating 4 million servants in response to COVID-19. Products are being donated to hospitals, first responders, food banks, veterans, and active military. Liquid IV has donated over 10 million servings globally. And right now, you can grab your Liquid IV in bulk nationwide at Costco, or you can get 25% off when you go to liquidiv.com and use code H3CZ at checkout. That is LIQUIDIV.com and use H3CZ at checkout. That's 25% off anything you order when you get better hydration for yourself today using promo code H3CZ at liquidiv.com. I'm going to give it to you one more time just for you to take it with you. Liquidiv.com to get 25% off your order when you use the promo code H3CZ. Back to my man Max. So again, huge thank you to DoorDash and Liquid IV for the sponsorship. You know, as this thing sort of gets up and running, for me specifically, like there couldn't have been a more perfect timing. Like this is why I feel like I was supposed to be doing this also right? Yeah. Because I see an underserved sort of community that sort of shares in one specific thing. And if only, you know, the people that watch me that have been with me for this journey are the only people that end up buying, you know, the you know, my product, then I would be a happy person because we have another thing that we share in common, right? But this is also going to be like people are going to try different things because people try different brands. The same way that I've tried all of these different IPAs, right? Is the same thing that's going to happen. You don't know what you like until you try it. So people are going to, you know, be going down that route. So that, along with the fact that I started this gaming sort of journey when I was 29 years old in 2009. At the time, our audience was, and we have the data, at the time the audience was like, you know, 13 to 17-year-olds. So now that we are, you know, 14 years into this journey, you're sort of starting to see, you know, dudes, you know, women that are now parents, have mortgages, have like this. And that's the sort of relationship that sort of made me think. It's like I'm no longer taking pictures where I'm leaning down and, you know, saying hi or meeting the parents or meeting that. Now I'm meeting grown people with their own kids at events that are all like, hey, when are you gonna make, you know, optic gaming gear for the kids, or when, you know, like all this other stuff. So I know that there are adults that are now doing this. So I felt like the timing could have been more perfect for me to sort of step into this industry. One, because, you know, I'm not responsible as I was. I'm not as responsible for helping them grow up in a sense as I was way back when, right? Like way back, like call it 2010 to even 2015, 16, we made it a point to be as clean as possible with everything that we created. We used to hide, you know, people smoking cigarettes. We used to hide like all of these different things because we didn't want to be those people that are, you know, sort of, we didn't ask to be role models, but there are the opportunities or there are the chances where some people may see us as that, especially the players. So we would hide certain, you know, aspects of our lives. We wouldn't talk about drinking. We wouldn't talk about partying. We wouldn't talk about all these other things. Where now, you know, they're grown adults. I can have this conversation with them and have that, which is again another indicator that I'm like, all right, I'm sort of stepping into the right direction now, and it makes it a lot more feasible for me to be okay and be in good terms with my audience, which is like priority number one, and secondly, being true to myself. Right, I love, you know, launching businesses, and I love, you know, I love smoking cannabis.
So I love smoking weed.
Yeah, and I like having a good time. I like who I am. Yeah, right. I'm more relaxed. I enjoy the moment a lot better. And you know, it just doesn't affect me the way that a hangover would. You know, especially at 41 years old, hangovers change over time, and they fuck you up. Yeah, you know, like in high school. Well, not in high school, but in like out of high school. And like I did, you know, I'm kind of lying there, Maddie, because I didn't really drink in high school at all until like I got out of high school. I was super straight edge. Yeah. And not because anything other than I wanted to be different. Right? I'm like, I don't do what my friends do and all that. I wish I would have, you know, I wish I wouldn't have been like that, but whatever. But, you know, like my hangovers when I was 21, 22, 23, 24 weren't what they were when I was in my 30s. Yeah. And they certainly aren't what they are now. You know, like my wife and I went out with the neighbors last week. And we were drinking margaritas, and me and my buddy Jeff, we were just keeping up with each other, just drinking. We drank like 5, 6, 7, and the next day, I was like, "What the fuck? I've never felt so shitty." Right? I didn't want to do anything, like nothing at all. Where on the other hand, you know, any single time I'm out on the West Coast or in Chicago, like I can smoke my brain silly and wake up next morning ready to go to work.
Yep.
Which is also like another thing that, you know, gives me the indicators. Like maybe I wasn't ever meant to be a drinker and, you know, a casual drinker or whatever. Anyway, the long loop here to get to where we were going with that is that, you know, as I'm approaching this launch, right, as we are approaching the launch of this, I'm sort of hitting this reflection point of like, what is the impact that I want to have in this thing?
Yep.
Like, how can I be additive instead of just coming in and saying, hey, I have an audience, here's the logo, fucking go buy this thing and do that. So from the beginning, it's like, all right, what are the 3 favorite strains that I smoked last year that really stood out to me?
Yeah.
And then we talk with our partner. Can we talk about Jason?
I think we could talk about Jason without giving too much away.
Yeah. So the guy's name is Jason. Okay?
He's Jason. He's got a really cool farm and grows really great weed.
And that's going to be that's going to be the headquarters for our brand, for the Hecz W33d Co headquarters. And you know, I'm like, okay, so we talk with him and we're like, all right, these are the 3 things that I would like to bring to the market. So I'm curating this thing.
Yep.
I want to share my 3 best that I had last year, and I'm sure that there's a million that I didn't try out. But as we're developing my own genetics, right, like my own plant, not that I'm growing it, I'm not a farmer, I'm not an artist. That's the other thing about this whole thing. As we were going through this, as I started to learn, I looked at all the farmers as artists, right? Like these are people that take pride in the work that they're putting in to a biology or biological, like, sort of,
it's meta, dude.
Yeah,
I mean, they have relationships with the plants.
One of the one of the weirdest things that I experienced was when we went to visit Jason.
Yeah.
That I saw these like red plastic little caps at the bottom of them, and I'm like, what are these caps? And they're like, oh, these are eggs that release these insects that are predators and only attack the things that are attacking the plants.
Yep.
So that to me was like the wildest shit. Like, think about what it had, like the amount of work that these people have put in over the last 30, 40, 50 years in this cannabis world to figure out all these different tips and tricks to figure out how to best create a yield that is, you know, good, beneficial medically, and also super fucking fun to smoke. Yeah. One of the things that we've been talking about was that I don't want to come to the market and be like, hey, listen, it's for the wellness of, you know, it is. We get that.
Yeah.
Like that should be the most obvious thing there, but it's also super fun.
Yeah.
When I'm launching my tequila brand, I'm going to be like, oh, well, you know, this is healthy. No, it's not. You're going to get, you know, you're going to have a really good time. You know what I mean? In moderation, like anything else.
Of course.
But as I'm going through this, I'm like, I want to put a spotlight on, if they would allow me, right, to say, or at least the farm, not the farmer, whatever they want. I want to be like, yo, these are some of the best artists in cannabis that create some really beautiful stuff. Yeah. Right. And
their stories are amazing. Yeah. Like, I'm pretty new, all right, to cannabis, relative to a lot of people, especially on the cultivation side. And for a lot, it's multi-generational. I mean, it's their parents did it. You know, there are a lot of people that are born, especially in the Central Coast and up north in California, Humboldt County, that have been trimming weed since they were a kid, right? And it's been a very important part of their lives and their families' lives and livelihoods. And there's so much institutional knowledge. Yeah. You know, we work with one farm called Wave Rider Nursery up in Salinas, a father-son combo. I mean, their genetics are based on surf culture. So the dad
Wave Rider.
Yeah, Wave Rider. I mean, he was following the summer, endless summer sort of, and going to Australia, you know, going to Thailand, going all over the world, South Africa, exchanging seeds. And, you know, basically, you know, building the genetic portfolio that we see today was driven a lot 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s by surfers following waves and exchanging cannabis. Yeah.
Have you seen the movie Surfer Dude?
No.
With Matthew McConaughey?
No,
it's so good.
Oh no, it's was that the one he's in Florida?
No, he's in the West Coast.
Okay.
Yeah, he's like a butt smoker and he's a surfer, and like they try to sort of commercialize surfing, and he's like, dude, I'm just a surfer, man. I don't want to fucking do ads for Red Bull or none of that. Like, you should watch it. It's really, really good. You guys should all watch it. It's really, really good.
No, but it, like, that's the sort of stuff where you know, the average consumer who's smoking weed in their dorm room in Pennsylvania, like I was in college, is not thinking about that. and is ultimately, will make their future purchasing decisions on understanding those stories and connecting with those people.
Yeah.
And there's really, from our perspective, no one better to help help consumers discover that and curate it. And I think there's been great, models out there with food, like Anthony Bourdain, like showed food to millions of people all over the world in a way that they never would have gotten into it. And I think cannabis is right there in that sort of juncture with just all the varieties, the specialty, the premium, the passion, that level of engagement is just ready to be unlocked.
Yeah.
So it, couldn't be more excited to tell Jason's story, a number of other collabs that we've got lined up. And as you said, I think it was never the idea that we would take some genetics in the market, rename it, and just call it, someone would buy it. I mean, everyone's dial. Like, if we took Kush Mints and renamed it, you guys would be like, no, it's Kush Mints.
Yeah.
So I think we're very cognizant of
I think the connoisseurs that live on the West Coast and have access to all of these things are so much more mature than somebody like me, right? Who throughout my entire life had whatever's available is what you're smoking, right? Now you have this, walking into a dispensary store nowadays is like, holy shit, the butt tenders, shout out to the butt tenders, by the way, because they are the ones.
Tenders.
Yeah, the tenders, right? Shout out to them because, sometimes I would, when I would go visit, like even call it 2 years ago when I would visit, I'd be like, hey, what do you like, right? Like, what haven't I tried? Because usually I would walk in and I'll just see what I like, even to this day, right? What's that brand with Hecz, right? Is it Hecz, the selfies?
Oh yeah. With the hash infused little.
Yeah. So that's what I like. That's what I like about from a branding standpoint. Like, I walk in, I already know where I'm going because I know that I want to feel the same way that I felt last time. So that's sort of also like been like, this, you only get this. Why am I only getting this? Why haven't I tried that over there? Why haven't I tried this over there? And I'm like, branding. Like, I know if I'm in a rush, I'm walking in, I'm grabbing the lime or whatever. That's like the one that I usually get from them, and I'm out. Right. I don't have time. Sometimes I don't even have time to roll it. Right. Like, sometimes I just want it. I just want to pull out my little box, my thing.
We're going to get, like, as you spend some more time out in California. So the pre-roll, like when I was living in New York, same way. I'd land in California. I get a bunch of pre-rolls. Yeah. Now I'm living in California. Like, there's the ritual.
Yeah.
We got to grind this up. The freshness. I think, there's a lot of convenience in the pre-roll market, but that full flower in its purest form, in that bag, I think that's where we're.
Yeah, and I think I got into an argument with some dude. I don't know if it was an actual argument or not, but I was talking to Nick and some dude just like, you don't grow weed. And in my head, I'm like, yeah, no, I know I don't. Like in my head, I'm like, yeah, that's obvious, but why are you saying that?
Yeah.
And had he approached it any other way, it would have been a conversation about like what he likes and why he likes it. And, we would have gone deeper into that. But he chose a different, too cool approach, which, look, by all means, everybody can act the way that they can act, right? They are connoisseurs the same way there are sommeliers of wine. These are the sort of people that people are gonna, some people are born with better palates, better sense of smell that can make a better what do you call it? A better, not judgment.
Really critic.
A critic. A better critic of somebody like me, right? Who doesn't have those options. So I think that as I go through this thing, I think that I'm going to tap into as many people as I can that already follow me, because it is, it's the easiest way to get 100 people to tell you, what they think about something, and then you're sort of influenced or you're sort of not influenced, and you're sort of like guided through certain things. Yep. So that's always been the approach here too, right? Like from the beginning. The other thing that I'm very like excited about is that like right now there isn't anyone that's creating that level of content that I want to take the approach on the same way
YouTube
that I have.
Just in itself, right? I mean, like, there's way more bass fishing content on YouTube than there is cannabis. And partly because of the regulation, but just
and the shadow banning, right?
Like the shadow banning, but cannabis content needs to be more than just taking massive bong loads on camera. Yeah. And it needs to tell a story. It needs to bring the customer closer to the experience. Dude, I mean, and that's why this is going to be so great.
I can't tell you the last time I uploaded a gaming piece to this channel, right? It's always been, for the last 3 to 4 years, it's all been personality driven. Yeah. Like even all of our contents are like everybody that's watching this, we share the fact that we play Call of Duty or that we play Counter-Strike or that we play whatever, right? But that's just such a small part, right, of it. the reason that these people keep on coming back, the reason that the green wall continues to stay there is because of the people behind it, right? Like we know each other, you know. And I always say how a stranger may say hi to me, but it's their recognition of mine that I'm like, okay, we share the optic thing together. Like we're, you know, green wall optic symbiote, you know, like they're strangers, but I feel like I know them because they know me so much for the last decade that it's like that sort of relationship. So I think that just like in cannabis, I think that there are going to be those personalities that are just that happen to share that thing, right?
Yeah.
That with the viewer, you know, Mike Tyson, for example, in his podcast, like. I share the fact that I've been his fan for a very long time. Never missed a fight of his in the 90s.
Yeah.
30 seconds or 2 rounds. Never missed it, right? Never. We always paid the $75 to watch a sometimes 15-second fight, right? But I've known this dude for such a long time that now that he doesn't box, I'm still engaged with him because I want to hear what he's saying. And the majority of the time, he's not saying anything in his podcast.
He's sort of
right?
mumbling on the podcast a little bit. He's got some help.
But, you know, I'm there for him. You know what I mean? And that's the sort of thing. So this is just another thing that I get to share with other people. And some people may come along. Some people may not come along, right? Like some people...
Yeah, I mean, we had that cool moment at the restaurant yesterday where someone hit you, like, knew you from bass fishing.
Yeah.
Like, you're on YouTube for the Guggen thing, right? And like, there's definitely going to be a lot of people... you know, over the next 2 to 3 years,
I hope so,
that are gonna like know you for being, you know, an incredible curator of cannabis products.
Let's hope so.
And that's gonna be a cool moment. I hope I'm with you. Yeah. That first like.
So yesterday, you know, when they landed, we're like, "What do you guys want to eat?" And they're like, "Barbecue."
Yeah, that's it.
They said barbecue or tacos, and I'm like, "We're in Dallas. We're not gonna get tacos." You know, that's the one thing you should know, right?
Okay.
Dallas does Tex-Mex really, really good. But the salsas, the second half of the experience, they shit the bed. It's just not good. Okay,
stand corrected.
There are like 5 restaurants or 5 taco spots that are like, and Maddie, write this down. We should make a video of the 5 Dallas taco spots that you gotta go to.
Yeah, sure.
Because
for the record.
Yeah, because if I had known that it was that scarce, I have to drive 20 to 25 to 30 minutes to go get a good taco. And maybe I'm spoiled now that I live in Frisco, because I'm sure that in Chicago I used to take as far of a drive as possible to get good tacos. But I didn't have to as much. And here there's only like 5 really good taquerias that are like legit good. So we went to Hutchins, and we were ordering, and then some dude comes from down the line. He's like, "Hey, aren't you that dude that interviews people on your YouTuber, right?" I'm like, yeah. And I didn't want to be like, "Oh, I'm an optic," right? So I'm like, yeah. And he's like, "Yeah, I think I seen you like interview some of the Guggens." And I was like, hell yeah.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah.
I love when people recognize me from shit outside of gaming. You know what I mean? Because I'm like, that's growth, right? Like that's expanding into other things.
And it really positions you. Most people don't know how massive bass fishing is.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I think people are learning about esports, obviously cannabis, but in a lot of ways, there are very few 41-year-olds on the planet that represent leadership of these emerging industries that hold millions of eyeballs of young, you know, emerging consumers. So in some ways, you know, someone be like, "Hecz, why are you doing cannabis brand?" But for me, my perspective, it's you're establishing yourself as somebody that is going to be a pioneer through and through. You're going to stick your neck out there to move in these emerging industries, and you're going to help people, you know, get closer to this enthusiasm, but also help parents better understand their kids. I mean, you're entering an age now in your 40s where you're almost like a bridge between a 60-year-old being like, "Why is everyone playing video games?" to you know, the teenager, the 20-year-old who doesn't understand their parents. And like that's like a really cool inflection point generationally that you sit in. And I just, you know, I think it all works together really well, and you know, really just happy and honored to be a part of this because, you know, we've built partnerships with celebrities and stuff in the past, but we haven't done anything with a celebrity, and we have a number of celebrities on our cap table. But I think it's the authenticity and transparency that this industry needs most. And you just can't buy that.
No, and I don't want to. I don't want to sell that. You know, I want to be a part of this the same way that I wanted to be a part of the fishing industry, the same way that I wanted to be a part of gaming, the same way that I want to be a part of like culinary, whatever, right? I want to be a part of it. I don't want to be participating in it. I want to be an actual part of it. So, you know, in doing all the research and then finding you guys and then, you know, being sort of able to approach it from a respect first sort of thing. Like, I know there's a culture behind it. I'm not here to take over. I'm here to be a part of it. How can I be introduced to this thing the right way without coming in? Because and look, I hate talking about other people's business, because one, I don't know what's going on behind the closed doors, but secondly, it's none of my fucking business, right? So for me to have an opinion on somebody else, I don't like to do that, right? Because I wouldn't like somebody to do that to me.
Yep.
But on that note, I do see a lot of people approaching the cannabis space from a celebrity standpoint that it's just like sometimes doesn't even make sense, right? I think, and what's worse about that is that when you have a star, right? When you have a massive personality like Burner, right?
Yeah.
And his brand Cookies, like, how is that not the North Star that you sort of want to approach, in that sort of, like, this dude's been in it from the traditional, business side of cannabis, and now into the legalization of cannabis, the biggest brand, in my opinion, in cannabis. And when you see, like, I'm not going to say names, but when you see, like, fucking whoever coming into the space and just being like,
yep,
this is my weed.
Yeah.
Like, that's not how it works.
That's not how it works. Let people know who actually grew it.
Yeah.
Let them know. Don't rename the strain.
Yeah.
Or if you're going to have to rename it for some reason, let people know that, like, what the actual true genetics are. I mean, there's just a lot of basic stuff. You start scratching your head. It really stems from a get-rich-quick mentality. Mm-hmm. I mean, our group and, the people that we work with are deeply invested, on a sort of decades, viewpoint. And I think once you sort of settle into that mindset and you get comfortable, you start feeling a little less anxious about, like, making the next big thing happen and trying to make the next big PR hit. Yeah. And really you look for longevity, consistency, and the right partners that you want to work with for the next 10 years. Yeah. Because that's what this is really all about. And we're really fortunate, our group, amazing company on the distribution side, Herbal, that we work closely with, that is going to do amazing things all across the country. Supply chain partners, farmers, incredibly blessed to be working with them. But ultimately, with all this, there's going to be more distributors, there's going to be more suppliers. Mm-hmm. It's going to come down to sell through. Yeah. Who can make the product move? Yeah. And whose brand, commands a premium, and who waits in line for it. And we're now getting into that phase in cannabis in California and beyond. Burner and Cookies have set the standard. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, they have pushed the envelope genetics. They've done the collabs from other industries that have been incredible, and it's been really organic. Yeah. I think that's what people, like, really do love about Cookies, is that they really do get a sense that they're supporting, like, their homie. Mm-hmm. They know Burner. Burner's like their plug. Yeah. But he just happens to be a plug for a lot of people now. Yeah. And I do think that there's some similarities, that playbook, there's nothing wrong with it. And I think that everyone should be looking at it and saying, this is a really good way to, like, combine cannabis and culture. But I do think there's going to be more, and there's going to be different iterations, just like the internet. Like, Google wasn't around till, like, 2000, right? Internet was around a long time. So Cookies is going to be around and continue to do things on a big scale, but there's a lot of room. And I definitely think, as, Burner sort of bringing sort of that intersection of cannabis and music, there's going to be these other intersections that are going to be just as powerful, and here we are. So super excited. Yeah, man. One of the other things is, like, the position that I'm in, again, going back to, like, the perfect timing almost for me, is that, like, I am in a space in which there are hundreds of creators that are way bigger than me, that are way smaller than me, that are just as, like, in the same level as I, that would like to dabble in this separate business, because all these people are making a ton of money from gaming. And obviously, as when you get money, you're sort of left with this responsibility of, like, we can't spoil this away. We got to invest this in the right places. So I saw that as, like, an opportunity for me. Like, all right, let me fucking run through this wall first. Let me get scratched up. Let me get the bumps and bruises. And you will, like, the shit's gonna go down. Like, we're gonna, crops don't always turn out the way you want them to. Like, there's, and we're gonna share that with, like, we're gonna hit some bumps in the road. Like, anyone that, like, walks around and is like, yo, I'm gonna, like, just absolutely have no issues on this, like, has not been in cannabis and has not been in business. Has not been in business. Any sort of business. So, on that note, as I was saying, like, I want to be able to be like that. Like, all my, like, the amount of people that are friends of mine that hit me up is like, how can I invest?
How can I get into this? How can I do that? Like, I'm like, let me get the bumps and bruises out of the way, and then let me usher you in the right way. Let me bring you along the right way and help you do your own thing. Because again, the amount of people that hit me up, like, and shout out to, like, for real, and I mean this, everybody that hit me up that is in the cannabis world, that has been in the cannabis world traditionally and now in the legal market, thank you. Shout out to you guys, and I will be reaching out at some point or another to see if we can work together some way, somehow. Because for the longest, like, having the ability to work with the people that have supported me from the beginning, like, that's a dream of mine, right? That's always been, right? To give back some way, somehow, right? Like, if, to whether it's somebody at an event sharing a beer with me because they bought me a beer, bought me a shot, like that sort of thing. I want to be able to reciprocate that, because they've changed my life, and all of these other journeys that I'm going into, like, I just want to continue to be able to, share shit outside of gaming. But don't get me wrong, right? Gaming and cannabis, it's a good pairing, the same way that wine and steak are.
Yeah,
right?
I mean, like, let's not fight nature here.
No.
That is not going to be the essence of this brand.
Yeah. A lot of people feel like they have to be, a medicinal wellness approach first when they talk about that, because of the state that we are in, right?
Yeah.
With this turnover where, you have states like this one, and then you have states like California, where it's like complete fucking opposites. But if you look at all of the rules and regulation makers, all of the governmental figures that are here, if you look at all of them and their investments, they are all in land, in greenhouses, in cannabis in some places, whether it's in the public markets or private markets. Like, these are all the people that make the rules around it, that are saying, sorry, we just can't make it legal here in Texas. But
we're gonna be ready when it is.
We're gonna be ready when it is, so we can benefit from it. Look, the game's the game.
Yep.
I'm okay with it. I have I'm not gonna call anybody a hypocrite. The game is the game.
Yep.
How you play the game, that's up to you. What type of player you want to be, that's up to you. But you have to look. What did you say yesterday?
Ignore what people say. Watch what they do with their money.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. Don't look at people's. Don't listen to what they say. Watch what they do with their money, right? And the amount of people that are invested in this, like to this day, like the amount of people that I hear in high positions in Texas that are doing certain things, because I have access to information like this, like, it's crazy.
Yeah.
Like, there is a lot of people that have already invested, have been investing into this thing that, they just see the opportunity, right?
Yeah, and hemp's already coming in big in Texas. I've seen a video of some of the largest greenhouse hemp cultivation facilities I've ever seen in my life. It's here in Texas. Yeah. So, it's going to be a good place probably to grow some weed. I would say, in general, just the institutional knowledge and the culture around the cultivation in California is just going to be so hard for people to compete. Now, if Texas can keep luring Californians over here, maybe the growers are going to want to move over here too. Yeah. But it's taken decades to get a lot of this stuff dialed. So I think the biggest thing, I was at a wedding before COVID, I guess in 2020 in Arkansas, and was just blown, because it was right on the border with Oklahoma. So everyone was just going across and getting, and I was just blown away, because I grew up in Atlanta, and that was an alcohol culture that I grew up in mostly. There was some pot around, but like everyone was doing dabs. They had their concentrates of flour.
What?
This like there was a big consumption of all these different form factors, because we were so close to Oklahoma. Yeah. And what people don't really this isn't like college kids in Berkeley like doing bong hits. No. These are working. Everyone's working. Yeah. Everyone's doing like, and I think the middle of the country for cannabis is going to be so much bigger than people are giving it credit for right now. And I think it's just going to be a major alcohol replacement. I think people are, like you said earlier, like the 7 margaritas and feeling like shit the next day. Like, at some point you can just stop doing that. So there's just going to be all these different cultural changes that I think people aren't necessarily totally anticipating based on what stereotypically weed is represented in the past.
I don't have anything else. I'm looking at my list here. I do want to say thank you to our partners, the people that are involved in the Hecz Weed Co. Can we say names, right? Yeah.
Yeah,
right? See, that's the problem. Like, the fact that I have to fucking ask whether or not I can say names is like, can we get to 5 years?
So, I mean, I think we could probably name reveal, probably 30 days.
From the time that this goes live?
Yeah.
Like from this weekend?
Yeah. So 30 days-ish.
So we've looked at the brands, right? The first pass through of the brand, the second pass through I think comes in on Monday. But we've been like the shit that I've seen is like mind blowingly good.
It's fun.
Yeah, it's fun. Yeah. I've shown people have like digged. They've digged it. I show it to all my friends that are my friends that are also like sort of people that I go to for advice and all that. Like I've showed everyone, and everyone's like, dope name, dope design. What does it look like together? You know what I mean? So I'm psyched.
Yeah, I think this goes without saying with your audience, though, but the merch and smoking accessories is going to be a lot of fun, too. I mean, like, been pretty blown, as a person coming in your world, just totally blown away with, the operation that you've built around yourself, just the ability to do new merch drops all the time and just keeping things fresh. And I think, like, that playbook with the combination of merch and other accessories being paired to different types of cannabis products, it really hasn't been done that well before. And obviously, we expect people to love it because it's going to be in the same spirit of everything you've been doing now, just with a little bit of a cannabis seasoning.
Yeah, I think that if COVID wouldn't have been a thing, like I think that by now I would have already launched a show, right? Like what we want to do next time we do a podcast, it has to be in LA so we can, have a smoke, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's gonna be fun getting stoned with the audience, man.
Yeah.
How do we make that happen?
Yeah, right.
How do we have like a group?
It's a thing. It's like, all right, listen.
Pass it.
Yeah, it's like, all right. Yeah, right. Because I mean, I don't know. I'm a big fan of I eat when I'm watching like food shows, right? Like that sort of thing. So I hope that, when the podcast starts, a little like, all right, it's time. We press the buzzer. That means everybody, spark up and
yeah. I mean, I think we could look at maybe some blunts that like burn through the amount of the podcast lasts or something.
Shit. Yeah, now
like,
you're getting super
would that work?
Yeah, I mean it could. I mean it would require like me
a little precision,
putting the whole thing down. And,
but
I hope my tolerance stays the same as it is right now, which is like a medium tolerance.
It goes up. It goes up.
Yeah.
I mean, when I moved from New York to California, it's like, and there's just a lot of people who can't really smoke weed and like just don't do well with THC. I'm probably similar to you. I'm one of them where I'm like, it doesn't really it obviously affects me, but
I'm high functional.
Yeah, in some ways it just like it makes my brain actually I think work oftentimes a little bit better. So but some people you take a hit and you're just like,
the one thing that I will say is that sometimes I get called out for being like stoned when I'm not.
When you're not?
Yeah. And I'm just like okay. Like it's I'm like, yeah, I'm not, So I look and I'm like, was it the joke that I made? Was it the way that I was acting? I'm like, I don't know. I guess it's just because I have in the past that people are just like, oh, he is or he isn't, he isn't. But the fact that like that is still a thing, like everything gets attributed to like, oh, you're high, right? Like, oh, you're doing this because of that, or you're doing this because like nobody says like you're drunk. They know I drink, right? But nobody says that. So we're still in that cusp of still being like, he smokes secretly, right? Like, oh, he's a secret smoker.
Is he high?
His
eyes red. I think. Well, California.
Like we have a guy here. His name is Hecz, who has like super red ass feet. And also has like sometimes has like red his eyes get red because he gets no sleep, right? He streams through the night and sometimes has to show up super early, so he wakes up and his eyes are red. It's like he's high. I'm like, he doesn't even smoke. You know what I mean? Like it's that sort of situation. Anyway, I want to say thank you to everybody watching. I want to give a quick shout out to my man Tyler, Kiana, Andrew, Dan,
Chris, Michael, Eric.
Caymans. Shout out Caymans.
Yeah,
can I say that?
Yeah. We can say shout. I mean, Michael Caymans is everybody's favorite. Yeah. So at some point we'll have to get everybody on.
But yeah, if you guys have any questions, you can leave them in the description down below. I'll try to answer that. If not, you can reach me on Twitter. More than likely, I would rather you guys ask me questions on the social media that we've created for the account. Right now, it's called just Hecz W33d Co as a placeholder. It'll be the first line in the description down below. Definitely follow us on Instagram because we do want to make sure that you guys are ready to go when we start dropping like all of the artwork and all the stuff. So excited to do that. Max, this isn't the last time that you're going to appear on one of my podcasts. I hope.
I hope we can partake in the next one, and then want the kind of the green wall to like judge whether they like me better like sober or like you know.
So we're definitely gonna have to launch a separate channel. Like I will include some of this journey like on my vlogs on this channel, but we are definitely gonna have to launch a brand new channel for Hecz W33d Co. That's where I do the content for that one specific one. Josefo and I have been working on different ideas for the type of shows that I want to bring to the cannabis world. So I'm super excited to launch those and share those with you guys whenever those are available. Anyway, spoken long enough. Certainly appreciate everybody stopping by, and thank you to everyone that showed up. DoorDash, Liquid, thanks so much for sponsoring the podcast, and hopefully we'll see you guys next time. Maddie, hit them with the music.